This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, and thank you for listening to this training on agricultural labor in New York. The Division of Immigrant Policies and Affairs, or DIPA, is home to the Foreign Labor Certification Unit and the Agriculture Labor Program. Our agriculture labor specialists serve employers and workers at their place of employment. The goal of this presentation is to provide some agricultural labor market information and to add some helpful tools to your current arsenal of labor service skills so that you can serve agricultural workers and employers just as you would serve all of their customers. In the same way that a veteran would be served at a career center, even if the local vet rep were busy, it is important that farm workers or job seekers interested in farm work receive quality, equitable employment services and are not told to wait for the agriculture labor specialist to return to the office. Let's begin with a basic overview. In this presentation, we will briefly describe the agricultural labor needs in New York State, discuss the agricultural recruitment system as an option for employers that do not wish to access foreign guest workers through the H-2A program, discuss the increasingly popular H-2A foreign guest worker visa program, demonstrate the process for making referrals of domestic farm workers to jobs that are in New York State or other states, introduce the tools the Ag Labor Program uses and show you how you can use them when serving job seekers, remind you how to classify farm workers in OSOS, and identify common obstacles in serving farm workers. As of January 1st, 2020, the Farm Laborers Fair Labor Practices Act went into effect. These are the new rights and responsibilities. Wages and overtime. All farm laborers, with few exceptions, must be paid 1.5 times the regular rate for hours worked over 60 in a calendar week. Day of rest. Employers must provide at least one day, 24 consecutive hours of rest in every calendar week. Employees may choose to voluntarily work on the day of rest, but must be paid at the overtime rate. Unemployment insurance and workers' compensation. Farm employers are required to provide unemployment insurance, excluding foreign guest workers, and workers' compensation coverage for employees. Farm employers must also provide disability insurance and paid family leave benefits to eligible workers. Right to organize. Farm workers now possess the right to organize. And housing permit. In 2021, employers must apply for a permit to operate a labor camp, farm or food processing, which will be occupied by one or more migrant workers. Employers and workers interested in learning more about the Farm Laborers Fair Labor Practices Act are encouraged to visit the DOL website, labor.ny.gov/farmlabor, or to call 833-NY-FARMS. Now let's discuss the Agricultural Recruitment System, or ARS. What is it? The ARS is a recruitment and referral tool for the employment services. Through the intrastate and interstate clearance orders, workers can be referred to agricultural employers for work of less than 1 year in duration. The goal is to meet the seasonal labor needs of agricultural employers, provide job opportunities to farm workers, and to protect the domestic workforce. The operational responsibility for the program rests primarily with the state workforce agencies in cooperation with the United States Department of Labor. There are steps within the clearance order process that must happen before moving to the next level to bring about an orderly movement of workers within and between states. Within each level, there are recruitment limitations and assurances the employer must agree to in order to participate in the ARS. Each limitation and requirement will be discussed as we go through the presentation. First, employers begin locally. Employers know what their seasonal labor needs are and can open a local job order at any career center, preferably in the career center nearest the job site. The employer places a seasonal job order using the local Ag job order form. Staff can also use the career center local job order form. If labor needs are not met through the local job order, the employer has the option to clear the order to other local offices within the state, which would be known as an intrastate clearance order, or ICO. As a recap, for a local job order, the recruiting area is within 65 miles from the place of employment, and the job order is approved by the local office or agriculture labor specialist. If seasonal labor needs are not met through the local job order, the employer has the option to clear the order to the other local offices. The local job order now becomes an intrastate clearance order, or ICO. The intrastate clearance order allows employers to recruit outside of the local workforce area, but still recruit only within the state of New York. This also requires the employer to provide assurances concerning wages, housing, and more. The employer, along with the state workforce agency's assistance, fills out the ETA 790 form, which is used to request permission to recruit outside of the local workforce area. The completed and signed ETA 790 form is sent to the State Monitor Advocate for review and approval. To recap the intrastate process, recruitment occurs throughout New York State, and the State Monitor Advocate approves the job order. The final step is to expand nationally. If the employer's labor needs are still not met through the intrastate clearance order, the employer has the option to file the job order at the interstate level. The same ETA 790 form used under the intrastate process is used to file the clearance order with the regional monitor advocate, who will review and either approve or deny the job order. The regional monitor advocate will also advise the state to which supply states to send the ETA 790 form. For the interstate process, recruitment occurs within designated supply states, and the regional monitor advocate approves the process. The ETA 790 form that we have been referencing is about 8 pages in length. However, there can be additional information added to the job order form that may increase the length of the application. The clearance order form describes the terms of employment for which the employer will be held accountable. The employer or his or her agent must sign the form. By signing the clearance order, the employer is committing to all the terms and conditions in the order. Also, attachments can be submitted to provide additional information. A completed ARS packet includes the Form ETA 790, a housing approval if the housing has already been inspected and approved, or a request for conditional access. If the housing has not been inspected or approved, the employer has 30 days prior to the date of occupancy to bring the housing into compliance. A checklist can be provided to employers in case one is needed to ensure that all the information required is reflected in the ETA 790. When New York sends the interstate clearance order to the designated supply states, New York is the order holding state, and the local office where the job order originated is the order holding office. The regional monitor advocate reviews and will either approve or deny the job order. The regional monitor advocate also determines the designated supply states. If the job order is denied, the regional monitor advocate must provide the SWA in writing the reason for the denial. If an interstate clearance order is approved, the SWA must distribute copies of the clearance order to the Labor Supply States SMA, to the applicant holding ETA regional officer, to the order holding ETA regional officer, and the Regional Farm Labor Coordinated Enforcement Committee. The recruitment procedures are the same for both intrastate and interstate clearance orders. Positive recruitment is the activity which involves direct action on the part of the employer to recruit workers. A direct referral is when the applicant holding office directs a qualified applicant to an employer in another state for an employment interview. Remember delegation of authority. The state workforce agency is designated as the hiring agent by the employer, and hiring commitments are binding upon the employer. Labor supply states have the right to refuse or accept the interstate clearance order. When accepted, the labor supply state actively recruits workers to the clearance order and performs other duties as well. To recap, what should be included in an agricultural job order at each level of the process? Local job orders must contain information about wages, information about the length of the work period, directions to the work site, and information about housing. Housing is not required to be provided at this point. However, it must be noted if the housing is available or not. For an intra-state clearance order, it must contain all of the above, as well as information about housing. Housing is required at this point. Transportation reimbursement is also required. An interstate clearance order must contain all of the above, with housing provided again at no cost. For questions, forms, and guidance about the ARS, please reach out to the New York State Monitor Advocate, whose contact information is available here. Now let's switch gears and talk about full-time and seasonal agricultural labor in New York State. Because crop production requires a lot of workers who will do heavy full-time labor for a short period of time, many farmers find it extremely difficult to find local workers. Many workers migrate from farm to farm to live and work where the crops are in peak harvest season, thus the term migrant and seasonal farm workers. Many of these migrant and seasonal farm workers, who we call MSFWs for short, come to work on farms in New York State and are legal residents of the United States, Puerto Rico, and other U.S. territories. These domestic farm workers can be difficult to locate, hire, and assist with job searches because of their transient nature. Therefore, many crop farmers in New York and elsewhere have resorted to hiring foreign workers who are in the United States under a temporary work visa known as H-2A. Most of the H-2A workers that work in New York come from Jamaica, Mexico, or Guatemala, but we have encountered workers from Egypt, Burma, and elsewhere. In order to participate in the federal H-2A program, farmers must be able to demonstrate that they cannot find qualified domestic workers who are willing to do the job. This means that they must actively recruit local workers before the foreign workers arrive on the farm. Employers are required to hire all qualified domestic job seekers who apply for the position during this active recruitment period. As the state workforce agency, we are required to post the active job order in OSOS and to follow up on referrals of qualified individuals who are interested in the job. Keep in mind that domestic workers are U.S. citizens or documented residents who are authorized to work in the United States. There are many costs to employers who hire foreign workers through the H-2A program. These costs include inbound transportation, visa, and border crossing fees for the workers to arrive at the farm from their permanent place of residence. However, if an employer hires an MSFW who is already in New York State, this cost is greatly reduced. Subsistence during the trip, including meals, can cost anywhere from $12.46 per day minimum to a maximum of $55 per day. For an MSFW whose trip may only last a few hours, this cost may be non-existent. H-2A employers must also provide free local or on-site housing and utilities to the workers. Some MSFWs may live locally and not need housing. Free transportation to and from the worksite from the housing must also be provided. But again, if the worker is local, this is not an issue. Another cost is the adverse effect wage rate, which is a pay rate that employers are required to pay H-2A workers and is currently $14.29 per hour, significantly more than the New York State minimum wage. The idea here is to discourage employers from hiring foreign guest workers and encouraging them to employ domestic workers instead. If an employer has just one H-2A worker, he or she must pay all other workers who are doing that same job at least the same pay rate or higher. As I mentioned before, an employer must provide free housing and utilities in order to participate in the H-2A program. If an H-2A job order requests 4 or fewer workers, a member of the Agricultural Labor Program staff conducts a thorough pre-occupancy housing inspection of the labor camp. That housing must comply with federal ETA or OSHA safety standards before the request can be accepted by the U.S. DOL. The New York State Department of Health conducts pre-occupancy housing inspections for job orders requesting 5 or more workers. Unfortunately, migrant and seasonal farm workers are not always provided with housing that complies with these safety regulations. Therefore, they can be disadvantaged in this regard. If someone in DIPA or the Ag Labor Program discovers very poor or unsafe housing conditions, like what you see in this photo, a member of our staff will take action to determine if we can assist in resolving the issue, or if not, to whom we can refer the matter for employment. All H-2A job orders are published on the New York State Department of Labor website after they are accepted by the USDOL Chicago National Processing Center. As you can see here in the first column labeled Job Order, there are two PDF documents. The first one opens up the full contents of the ETA 790, which is the H-2A work contract. The second document is the AL 516S, which is the Agriculture Labor Program's Spanish translation of the essential terms and conditions of the ETA 790. The expiration date of each contract, which is displayed in the furthest right column, indicates on what date the employer no longer has to hire domestic workers who apply for the job. In addition to being published online, these documents are sent to New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Puerto Rico, which are designated supply states for New York through the Interstate Agricultural Recruitment System. Agriculture Labor Program staff also make these documents available to customers who are interested in employment under one of these contracts, and Career Center staff can do so as well. The ETA 790, shown again here, is the work contract that describes all the terms and conditions of the job, including the period of employment, job description, number of workers requested, housing and work locations, rate of pay, crops produced, and other H-2A related details. This should look familiar, as it is the same ETA 790 form that is used for the ARS process. The AL 516S is our Spanish translation of just the essential terms and conditions of the contract for those who prefer Spanish. This is a much more condensed document. DOL staff are required to actively match and refer any qualified domestic worker to H-2A jobs before the 50% contract expiration date, which is noted as the last open date in OSOS. When referring a job seeker to an H-2A job, staff should provide the customer with the ETA 790, the AL 516S if Spanish is the customer's preferred language, and the employer contact information located on the ETA 790 and an OSOS. Part of DIPA's role is to ensure that qualified workers are given every opportunity to apply for and obtain employment under H-2A job orders. When we become aware of a referral of a domestic worker to an H-2A job, we then contact the applicant to further determine if the applicant is qualified, interested, and would like to apply. The staff member who manages this process is known as the labor liaison. If the applicant is determined to be qualified, interested, and would like to apply for the job, the labor liaison will facilitate the application of the individual. This process will include contacting the employer on the worker's behalf, reminding the employer of federal regulations regarding the hiring of qualified domestic applicants, and interpretation and interview assistance throughout the process. Employers are not required to take advantage of the interview assistance services. However, it is recommended to ensure that employers are in compliance with the requirements. When you at the Career Center make a referral to H-2A jobs, please notify the labor liaison directly by sending a quick email to the mailbox agreferral@labor.ny.gov. The email can include the name and job order number of the referral, as well as the customer name and OSOS ID. The labor liaison will affirmatively look through OSOS regularly to find referrals, but this process of emailing us the information can assist in making sure that all referrals are properly tracked and assisted. Like New York, the Department of Labor offices in our recruitment states send us copies of their H-2A job orders. All of them are available online in the same way that New York's H-2A job orders are published. As you can see in the left column, the first two letters for each job order indicate the state in which the H-2A job is located. One of the tools that we have developed to help program staff conduct outreach to farm workers is the Job Order Tracker, which is also available to Career Center staff. The Job Order Tracker is an Excel spreadsheet that is regularly updated to reflect all H-2A and non-H-2A agricultural jobs that are in active recruitment or are open in OSOS. Each entry includes the employment period, whether it is seasonal or year-round work, the county where the job is located, the crops produced on the farm, any experience requirements for the job, and the number of positions available. Not all agricultural work is full-time or temporary. Therefore, many farms cannot participate in the H-2A program because federal law mandates that foreign workers can only be hired on a full-time but temporary basis. Dairy farms are good examples of year-round farm operations that rely exclusively on local domestic labor. Some dairy farms advertise their job openings with career centers, and some of them are happy to hire domestic workers who have become unemployed due to the end of the temporary harvest season or work contract. When meeting with a customer who has a background in agriculture, it is important to classify the individual accordingly in OSOS. You may also want to give the customer one of the P737 booklets titled Services and Protections for Farm Workers, which provides a lot of legal and safety information that the customer may find helpful. If a hard copy is not available in your office, you may print one out from the Programs and Tools menu for workforce professionals under Government and Research on the New York State Department of Labor website. In order to determine if someone is a migrant and seasonal farm worker, you may refer to the MSFW Desk Aid as a reference. It describes a seasonal farm worker and a migrant farm worker or food processing worker and is also available online. You can designate a customer as an MSFW under his or her eligibility tab in OSOS. The federal definition for an MSFW was updated in 2016. In simple terms, a seasonal farm worker is a worker who has engaged in agricultural work of a seasonal or temporary nature in the last 12 months who was not required to be away from their permanent place of residence. A migrant farm worker is a worker who has engaged in agricultural work of a seasonal or temporary nature in the last 12 months who was required to be away from their permanent place of residence. You may also designate a customer as a dependent of a migrant or seasonal farm worker. OSOS still reflects the previous year's definition of a migrant and seasonal farm worker, which includes a breakdown of qualifications based on time worked and amount earned. Due to the new federal regulation, you may mark a worker who you determine to be an MSFW as an MSFW in the system, even if they do not meet the old requirements maintained in OSOS. First, simply classify the individual as a migrant and seasonal farm worker. Reminder, the identification information for migrant and seasonal farm worker is located under Customer Detail, then the tab named Eligibility. After determining if a worker is a migrant or seasonal farm worker, you can determine the farm work type, which will be either agricultural production and services or food processing establishment. The last two steps are the steps that are no longer required with the new federal definition. Since OSOS does not require that you fill in these fields, you may leave both blank. These fields indicate employed in farm work and farm work threshold. Limited English proficiency and other linguistic obstacles can create challenges when serving farm workers. It is important that these individuals are never turned away from a New York State Career Center due to a linguistic barrier. That is why important posters that should always be displayed in the Career Centers include the Language Identification Tool, which can help an individual identify his or her preferred language, and the Right to File a Complaint poster. The latter poster informs customers that they may file a complaint in the event that they are not served due to a linguistic barrier. Telephonic interpretation, which can be accessed through LanguageLine, is one of the services that may be used for serving LEP customers. Be sure to follow your office's specific directives, which may include a distinct access code for LanguageLine. It should also be noted that the New York State Department of Labor provides vital documents in Spanish, Chinese, Russian, Haitian Creole, Korean, Italian, and Polish. Agriculture labor specialists assist workers and growers by conducting housing inspections and field checks for H-2A job orders, encouraging farmers to post job orders with the New York State Department of Labor, and making referrals to these jobs and referring farm workers to positions that may be in agriculture or in any other industry. This is the current territory map for our agriculture labor specialists. The Agriculture Labor Program covers the entire state of New York, which we have divided into different territories. The agriculture labor specialists, as the program's field staff, function as mobile career centers in these areas so that MSFWs who do not have the time, transportation, or other resources to visit a career center can still have access to employment services. However, these farm workers are encouraged to visit the career centers in order to access all of the available resources. For this reason, we should all be prepared. This concludes our presentation, but we are available if you have any questions. You can call us at 877-466-9757 or send an email to dipa@labor.ny.gov. Please remember to check out the Agricultural Workers menu under the Programs and Tools page under Workforce Professionals on the New York State Department of Labor website. Thank you and have a great day.